Welcome everyone and welcome to this week's F3 track guide. The last of the current season. We are at Hungaroring and what a season it's been. I've thoroughly enjoyed the fixed setup series this time around and I must say I've enjoyed it more than the open setup. I love not having to fiddle about with setups and just race people on a level playing field. And generally speaking as well, the fixed setups have been really good. They've been a joy to drive. There hasn't been one track where, obviously some have been better than others, but there hasn't really been one track that I've hated the setup. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully these track guides have helped you out as well. Made you more consistent, made you faster, and just overall enjoy the series more, which that's what it's all about, enjoyment, as well as some iRacing as well, if we can. But yeah, I just want to say before we head into it, of course, there hasn't been a fixed track guide for a few weeks now. Unfortunately, for anyone who doesn't know, I did have to take a forced hiatus from sim racing because I caught COVID. Thankfully, I'm back to 100%. And yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to all the get well messages. I've really enjoyed it, and you guys have been supporting the streams as well as I've come back. So yeah, a big thank you guys. But yeah, let's get to the task at hand. Hungaroring, brand new track, really suits this car. Obviously, if you watch F1, you're familiar with this track. Can be difficult to overtake on in F1, but it has thrown up some great races in the past, and I think it's going to be the same here. It's a good fixed setup once again. One thing I have noticed is that this track is hard on the rear tyres. So you have to be careful on the throttle because you can overheat them and lose grip. But what that means is that it takes a little bit longer for your front tyres to come up to temperature. So the front end grip takes, I noticed, about 5 laps to get those tyres up to temperature. So yeah, just something to take into account there, guys. As always, the car reacts very differently and not very nice at the start of a race. Cold tyres, cold brakes, a full tank of fuel. So yeah, it's just take that into consideration, guys. We're not going to be able to go full out from the get-go or within those first 5 laps because yeah, you'll probably end up spinning or in a barrier. But as always, let's head into it. We are going to have the hot lap from the cockpit view, then far chase camera angle, and then we're going to talk through the lap, analyse it, and see how we put it together. Certain areas to keep an eye out for and look at. So yeah, lo and behold, let's head into it. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications on, and enjoy. So guys, let's see how we put that lap together. Now just before we do, I want to make reference to my brake bias. I always alter the brake bias in the fixed setup series. It's the one thing we can change, and it's always too far forward. 55.5 is just a no-go. You're going to lock up your tyres pretty much around every track. Now I've moved it back to 53.1, and that suits me, of course, personal preference for everyone. But what I found around this track is that we do have some hard braking zones here, i.e. the first corner, which we're about to head into. But we also have, particularly during the middle sector, some trail braking is required. So we need to find a brake bias for one size fits all, shall we say. And 53.1 was that. If I went a bit higher, I did try 53.8 and 44.1, and they just didn't really work for me. But of course, everyone is different, but that's a base for you guys to go upon. Also, just a little extra added note, the track temperature here was 25 degrees with an air temperature of 23. Track temperature always plays a big factor into our lap times. So I don't expect to see really hot track temperatures here this week, because the date and time that this is supposed to be set at is in the middle of winter, January, I believe. I had a couple of issues trying to get a January time set up, so this is in the end of October, but still cold enough track temperatures that I've seen other people set their lap times in. So right, let's head into it though. So we're going to run this down into the first corner, down the big long main straight, and we're going to see the majority of overtakes here, guys. As you probably have seen in F1, this is the prime overtaking opportunity. If you nail the last corner, which of course we will get to at the end of this analysis, you can draft someone easily down here and probably clear them before you get to the braking zone. Now, as we just move it on slightly, what we keep an eye out for, guys, is this white line here. Now, it's just past the 100 board marker. Thankfully, iRacing added in the board markers into the first corner. Originally, when they added this in, they weren't here, so everyone was just eyeballing their braking zone or braking marker. But yet, we've actually got this white line, which you will see. That's when I start to brake. You can see my braking markers there, and we're braking in a straight line. Quite a lot of brake pressure, but all the weight has moved onto the front of the car, which is why the wheels aren't locking up, and of course with our brake bias. And really what you should be doing here, guys, is looking into the apex. You should always be looking into the apex as it comes into view turn in. But if you want a visual reference to start turning in, on your left hand side you've got this hut. So as you see this hut kind of go past your vision on the left hand side, that's when you then start to turn in. We're in second gear at this point as well, holding the brake, trail braking round, controlling the front end of the car, and we're then going to shift down into first gear just before we get into the apex. What this does, guys, this just allows the front end of the car to turn in. I have tried second gear around here, and the front of the car just doesn't turn in. So when you get on the power, you just run out of track on the exit, and it's just an easy 1x, and of course not the ideal line. So what we're doing, we're keeping it as tight to this apex as possible. As you can see, the apex here is raised quite uniquely, actually. I haven't seen this at any other track. And you want to keep your right wheels as close to that as possible. And what's important here, guys, of course, is when you want to get on the throttle. So how I think about it of when you want to get on the throttle is that when you're around halfway around the apex, and the front of your car is kind of, I would say, perpendicular to the grass on the right hand side, that's when you then want to get on the throttle. But of course, we're not stamping our foot on the throttle, because look at our steering input. If we get full throttle here now, the rear is just going to spin on us and want to overtake us. So of course, still be careful. And then as you unwind the steering wheel, open the steering up, you can get on full throttle quickly. Bit of practice is required here. Of course, when you're in first gear, it's very quick when you get on the throttle to hit the rev limiter. So just be careful that you don't hit the rev limiter and you shift up into second gear, plenty of time, because of course you're going to bog down and you're going to lose a bit of speed down into the next corner. So as we move on, we are now running down into another short straight that is an overtaking opportunity. As you know, in Formula 1, this is where they've got their second DRS zone. And what we're keeping an eye out for, guys, is we're moving over to the right hand side because this is like a downhill left long hairpin, shall we say. It's not a tight one. Jumbled up a load of words there. But what we're keeping an eye out for is the start of the curb on the right hand side, where the red and white curb starts. As we get to that, that's when we then start to brake, as you can see with my throttle inputs there. And we want to make sure that we brake in as straight a line as we can. So we are turning the wheels slightly because we want to get the car moving round to the left. But be careful not to put too much steering input in, because as we know, if you put steering input in while under braking, the car is going to spin. And what we're going to do is we're going to shift down into third. And then as we shift down into third, and you can see there we're trail braking around here, just managing the front end of the car and the weight transfer to get the car turning round. And then we're going to shift down into second. The car round here, you may have to control the rear end a bit with your steering inputs, because the rear end does like to, because we're downhill and we're slightly turning, the rear does like to wobble a little bit, so just be careful there, guys. And then we're into second gear, lifting off the brake and keeping it tight. Now, we don't want to be too tight, and this curb looks very inviting. It does, trust me. I've been up this curb plenty of times in practice, but what you'll notice is that there is no grip. Very quickly, you'll go, nope, I need to stay off of that, because if you get any tyres on this curb here, it's just going to spin on you, and you'll have to lift off the throttle. So, as always, want to be as tight as possible, but not on it. And I'm feathering the throttle here. I'm just waiting for the front end to get in. And really, my visual reference is this green Rolex banner here. That's my visual reference of when I get on full throttle, is when I just hit that or just go past it. Of course, I'm getting on the throttle a little bit earlier. I'm feathering it. But when I get round this banner, that's when I'm full throttle. Seems a little bit delayed there, but that's how it feels. Of course, this all happens very quickly. And then I allow the car to drift out to the right. And then this is a beautiful section. You can just move the car over to the middle a little bit. You don't need to go all the way over to the left. This is not a corner that you really need to open up. And then it's just full throttle, keeping it as tight to the curb as possible, trusting that downforce, because this setup really has a lot of downforce. And then running up into the fast left-hand kink. Now, as we run this up, this corner here is a pain. No other way to say it. In your quali times, this is a corner where you'll probably gain and lose so much time. It's so easy to run wide here. It's so easy to cut the corner. It's a blind left-hander. It's all about the perfect judgment. And the fast guys will be doing consistently fast lap times. The reason why is because they nail this corner every single time. The way I think of it is it's very similar to the blind right-hander. Can't remember the name. The blind uphill right-hander at Donington. Confidence is key here. Now, what you want to do, of course, this is going to be very different in a full tank of fuel. You will have to dab the brakes a lot more here, but how I see it is that as I'm approaching the crest, just before I get to the crest, I lift off the throttle. I'm over to the right hand side because I want to open up the corner, and there's a slight touch of the brake, as you can see, just to get the front end turning in. And all the while, I'm not on the throttle yet, and I'm trying to keep it as tight to this apex as possible. Now, what you can do here, guys, is I probably could have got 2 wheels over the curb here. I have seen people do it. I've seen some hot laps where they do that, and there is time to be gained. But it's a very fine line of that turning point because it's a blind corner. It's so easy to take too much of it and you get a 1x. Obviously, you take it too severely, you'll get a slowdown. So ideally, we just want to be as tight to the apex as possible. And then as we get past, we get full throttle. And you can see here, this is a nasty little rumble strip here because there's a dip that your wheels get caught on and takes a few car lengths to get the car back onto the racetrack. So in all honesty, I probably could have turned in a touch earlier and I would not have run as wide. I would have kept all 4 wheels on the left-hand side of this green curb here, or rumble strip, and it would have made it much easier for me to get the car over to the left-hand side for the next right-hander sooner, and probably lost about a tenth there, maybe. Yeah, I'd say probably a tenth easy. Now, be careful, guys. If you do overshoot this corner and go onto the concrete, you will get a slowdown when you rejoin the track. So you're better off going through there a little bit slower than you are to go wide. And as well, I mean, it's a brave man who decides to overtake up here. I would only overtake up here if you was ahead of the guy on the inside. If you're on the outside, more often than not, you're gonna have to yield. It takes a brave man or woman to try and hang this around the outside. You're just asking for trouble. You just are. So it's not worth it. But yeah, we'll play this on. And very quickly, what you want to do is get the car over to the left-hand side so that we can open up this long right-hander. Pretty much another long right-hand hairpin. And what we're keeping an eye out for, guys, is the end of this barrier here, this coloured barrier. And as you can see, I'm braking just before it. That's what I'm keeping an eye out for. And we're going to shift down into third gear. There's no need to get the car all the way over to the left-hand side. There's just not any need. You're covering too much track, and there's not enough track between you and this corner once you come around the previous one. So you don't want to swing it all the way over to the left-hand side. And then here, we're turning in as you see the apex come into view. Once again, it's one of these curbs that looks tempting to get your wheels onto, but don't, because you'll just lose traction. Trail braking rounds. It's tempting here as well to get it into second gear. Very early on in the race with cold tyres and full tank of fuel, you may have to shift into second, but this is a third gear corner 95% of the time. And then what we're keeping an eye out for to get back onto the throttle is this orange barrier here. Don't ask me why it's there, but it's a great reference point. You can see I'm already starting to get on the throttle, and pretty much as that gets into the center of my view, that's when I'm back on full throttle, allowing the car to move over to the left. The car may wobble a little bit on the rear because you're putting a lot of power into the rears there, while still with quite a bit of steering input. So you have to manage that oversteer. Don't go too wide here. Obviously you can see there's a little bit of a runoff. Once again, concrete runoff. But if you go wide here, you will get a slowdown and a 1x. And then we come up into the middle sector where it's so easy to lose time. The fast guys, when you're wondering, I know I said that the kink is a corner where you can gain and lose a lot of time. And that's where you'll see the fast guys just nail it every single time. But the middle sector is really where you, especially in qualifying, is where the time is going to be made up. That is where most people are making up time on you. If you can't figure out where it is, this is where. So it starts with the chicane, and we'll just play that back a little bit. What we're keeping an eye out for, very similar to a few corners before, we're keeping an eye out for the start of the red and white curb. In fourth gear at this point, and we start to brake, as you can see, throttle inputs. And once again, if you want a turning point, you should be looking at the apex, but if you want a turning point in your peripheral vision, this hut, as that goes out of your left-hand side, that's when you want to start turning, as you can see with the steering inputs. And we want to go through here in second gear. And what we want to do here, guys, is, once again, it's a chicane that's very easy to carry too much speed. It's quite a sharp one, but it's quite quick at the same time. So we're trail braking here, as you can see, a little bit of brake pressure is applied. And here, what we want to do, the key here is to try and keep it as tight as we can so that we open up the left hand. So we keep it tight around here to open up the left-hander. And that allows us to get on the throttle as early as possible for the exit of the chicane. So what we can do, we can get two wheels up onto the curb, actually up. And you'll see that from the far chase camera angle. I'll tell you what, we'll have a look at the far chase camera angle here. You can see how far up on the curb we are. Probably pushing it, in all honesty. My left wheels are on that white line. If my left wheels are inside of this white line, that is an off track. So just be careful there, guys. I'm not sure about slowdowns here. I have got 1X's, not sure about slowdown, but yeah, just be careful. And then what that does, that allows us to get the best angle that we can. And very quickly, as you can see on my throttle inputs, we'll just play it back. We're always about half, as we come off the curb, as you can see, as we're on the curb, we're getting back on the throttle. And then as we get onto the tarmac and we're about to go into the left-hand exit of the chicane, we're on full throttle. And yes, you can within reason attack this little sausage curb here, but try and avoid it as best as you can. Try and be as close to it as you can, but try and avoid it. Well, they're one and the same really, aren't they? Because it can really throw your car up and cause probably some floor damage and even some front wing damage. So just be careful. As again, look, that is as much as that sausage curb that you want to take. We're on kind of the inward slope, shall we say, of that sausage curb. If you're any further over, once again, you will get an off track as well, and you'll get the added bonus of some floor damage, which will cause you some loss of time. So yeah, allow the car to move over to the right hand side, and this is where things get very fast and furious, shall we say. Now, these next two corners are tight and they're quite difficult in this car. I feel like the fixed setup could do with just a little bit more front end. That's probably where the open setups are going to excel. They're going to keep that top end speed, but also maintain a bit of downforce just to allow them to nail these next few corners. And this is where you can really lose time at these corners here. So braking marker wise, you can see is here the start of the banners on the right hand side, and we start to turn in, trail braking, and we enter the corner in fourth gear, or just before we get to the corner we're shifting down into third gear. And what you want to do is try and keep it tight here, because we really need to keep it tight round this left-hander to open up the right-hander. It's basically another chicane, but it's a much longer chicane. It's not as short as the other one. But if we go into far chase, once again, we are half our wheels, or our left-hand wheels, are on the curb. Fine line between getting a 1X. And of course, if you're further over here as well, the middle of the car is going to bottom out on the shelf of this curb and will slow you down. The car will bounce up and down. So not only will you pick up a 1X, you're also going to lose time and control as you come off the curb. Head back into cockpit view. And you can see there, we're back on the throttle. Moving the car over to the left as quick as we can. You're not going to really get the opportunity to bring it all the way over to the left-hand side because there's just not enough track between you and the next corner. And then we're doing something very similar here again, but this time we're in third gear because we don't get the opportunity to get up into fourth. Just trail braking round, keeping it as tight to this apex as we can. You can see here we're going to far chase. Do get up on this little shelf. You can, of course, there's not as much room here to get up on this shelf as there are on the previous corners, so you have to be very careful about that. And then as you get round this corner, this is all about judgment here. There's not really any visual reference ahead of you. There's some trees, there's no orange barrier here to indicate when to get on full throttle. It's just judgment and practice that really, as you come round the corner and you can kind of start to see the track ahead of you round the right hand side, that's when you can get on full throttle. Because this corner is very, very easy to get on the throttle early because it is quite deceiving in that sense. And run wide here, it's an easy 1x to pick up. And also, if you run over on this concrete stuff, you'll get a slowdown as well. And you don't want to be doing that. So yeah, just be very careful there, guys. And then from here, it's full throttle, keeping it tight round the left-hand side, this left corner, covering as little track as we can. And then we're into a fast right-hander, and we're keeping it in fifth gear. And as you can see, we lift, and we have a very slight touch of the brakes just to get the front end turning in. But very quickly we're off of it and we're back onto full throttle. You can see there I'm up on the curb again. In all honesty, I didn't want to do that. I got away with it. I probably would have been quicker. I think I actually lost time here. You want to keep it as tight to the apex and not get up on the shelf. As you can see, very, very fine line between touching the grass and this lap not happening at all. So take that into consideration, guys. Just be careful. And then we play it along. And once again, we've got a little bit of runoff here. This is easy as to the previous corner to get a 1x, to get on the throttle too early. This is the one where you're going to see probably most people get slowdowns as well. Because it's full throttle on the exit. It's a fast corner, and if you get on the concrete and rejoin the track kind of past this track, or if you go on the concrete full stop, you get a slowdown, and it's a real pain. So yeah, just don't do it. And then we come down into another heavy braking zone. Now this here is an overtaking opportunity, I would say, in this car, because we're in a high downforce car and we can follow, well, say we can follow. It'd be interesting to see, because we do, when we're in someone's draft, we do see a drop in downforce. So it'd be interesting to see how the car reacts in that last sector. It may be quite difficult to follow, but if you can, then, and now that last corner, this is a good overtaking opportunity down on the brakes. And once again, what we're keeping an eye out for is not the ball, not the yardage markers. We are keeping an eye out on the curbs. The red and white curb, the start of it on your left hand side, is when you want to start braking, as you can see from the inputs. Move this on and shift down into third gear. Now this corner, guys, for me, third gear worked best. I don't know, just there's quite a nice bit of front end through this corner actually, and second gear, just, I don't know, I felt I got too much engine braking. When I've got a full tank of, this is done with half a tank of fuel. We've burned off a bit of fuel by this point. We're at the start of the race with a full tank of fuel. This is not going to be third gear, I don't think. It's definitely going to be a second gear corner. But once you've burned off some fuels and the tyres are up to temperature, I preferred third gear. Of course, everyone's different, and just give it a go, have a play around. But we're turning into the corner. Now, turning points, really, you should be looking into the apex. You want to be turning in before you reach this hut on the left hand side, you should be looking at the apex. And what we can do, similar to previous corners, we can get 2 wheels up onto the curb, travel round, and as we come off the curb, we're on full throttle. Quickly open up that steering. May get some oversteer around this corner, even in second gear, so be aware of that. Manage your throttle inputs. Just kind of expect it to happen and be ready for it so that you can fight the wheel. And then this is also a corner that's easy to pick up a 1X, so just be careful there. And then very quickly we're moving the car over to the right hand side to our short hairpin. Now what you want to keep an eye out for, guys, braking marker reference, is I use this shadow here which is coming from this bridge, shall we say, or marking, and that is my braking marker pretty much as I get to it. Now if it's not nice and sunny, that's going to disappear, so you can also use the hut on the right hand side. But as we move this along, we're shifting down into second gear, trail braking here, turning in properly into the apex. If you want to reference in the middle of your screen the crane there, trail braking, controlling that front end, trying to get the front end of the car turning in. As always, as we said previously, stay off of this curb, you'll just lose traction. And then you want to start getting on the throttle here. So as you can see, we've got a lovely orange barrier in front of us as a reference point. Hallelujah. And that is, as that comes into the center of your screen, that's when you can start really getting on the throttle, but it's quite a long hairpin. This is where you're probably going to see a lot of people spin, more so than any other corner, I would say, because it's just going to be so easy to get on the throttle too early. Really, you only really want to get on full throttle once you kind of exit the corner. As you see, the middle of the car here, kind of just get past this hut or start to come into alignment of this little bridge again, or this advertising bridge, and open up the steering. You will feel, as you can see, a bit of a fight at the wheel there, where the rear end or the rear tyres are spinning up. Use a little bit of the runoff, and then very quickly, guys, we're moving the car over to the left hand side. So you want to angle the car here over to the hut, or in between the hut, the marshal's hut here. And then I'd shift up into 4th gear with the level of fuel that we've got in the tank. So there's about half a tank of fuel here. There's a bit more speed out of the corner, so you do hit the rev limiter in 3rd gear, but with a full tank of fuel you probably won't hit 4th gear, so you want to just keep it in 3rd really, and then lift off. And then as just before, I don't really use the marshal's hut on the left hand side as a braking marker. You can do, because theoretically that's where we're braking, just as that goes out of view. But I'm keeping an eye at this white line in front of me. That's just as that kind of comes into my view, it's just that as you can see, it's just in front of the nose of the car. That's when I start to brake. And then we shift down into 3rd, and I keep it in 3rd round here. You may, as we said again, as to the previous hairpin, you may end up needing to shift into 2nd, just to get this round. Actually, the previous hairpin, we're in 2nd anyway, so ignore what I just said. But early on in the race, cold tyres, full tank of fuel, you may have to shift down into 2nd here just to get the front of the nose turning in, and obviously where those front tyres haven't got up to temperature yet. And as we come around the last corner here, just going to stop it here, because what I use as a reference marker to get on full throttle. So as you can see, my throttle inputs, I'm I'm starting to ease on the throttle here. Obviously, we're not all the way round this last corner yet. If we get on full throttle, we're either going to spin the car because we've got too much steering input, or we're just going to run out of track. And what we keep an eye out for, or what I did, is this inside curb here, which is, I'm assuming, are the colours of the Hungarian flag. I think that's supposed to be orange, but looks more red to me. Maybe I'm going colourblind. And this goes round this corner, this pattern, about 3 times. And what I keep an eye out for is this second white curb. So it actually kind of inverts itself here in regards to the order that it's in. But just move that back and we move forward. And you can see there's the first one, there's the first white inside curb, and then this is the second. And that is when I then get on full throttle. That's what I'm looking for. Trying to keep it as tight to this curb as possible without getting on it. Don't want to, well, I am going to repeat myself. Don't get on that curb. You'll lose traction as per the previous corners like it. And you can see here, that's my go ahead to basically get on full throttle. I know I'm far enough around the corner now that if I straighten out the steering, full throttle, I'm not going to run out of track. Little bit of oversteer, and then allow the car to use the runoff and down to the main straight. Now, I'm going to end this track guide with a little bit of a naughty tip for you guys. It's a naughty tip because it's something that I've discovered. So this last corner, this last runoff, unlike the previous corners, or where there's been runoffs of similar ilk around this track, and you are punished with an off track, you are not, sorry, not an off track, you're punished with an off track, but also a slowdown. You are not punished with a slowdown here on the exit of the last corner. So, if you're chasing someone, or you're being chased, and you need a nice drive out of the corner, because this is a very important corner because it sets up the run down into the prime overtaking opportunity into the first corner, you can be a bit sneaky. And you can run wide here. I've gone round this DRS board, rejoined the track, and been fine. Now, I don't condone that behaviour, but you know what? The best of the best know the limits. They know how to get around things. Look, this is the 29th of November. If you're watching this in the future, I am sure iRacing are probably going to patch this. But this is a nice little naughty tip for anyone who has stuck around for the end of the track guide. So, yeah, if you've stuck around to hear this naughty tip, don't put it in the comments. Shh. Be interesting to see. Just let me know if you've taken into account the naughty tip. But it's just something to take consideration. If you've got 1Xs to spare and you're being chased, or you're trying to chase someone down, you can do it, and it is a gain in time. And that's one of the things about iRacing. It is still a sim. It is still a game. There aren't marshals, live marshals, to enforce these things. If you was in a league race, if it was in real life, you would not be allowed to do that. But yeah, just a little bit of a naughty tip I've found there, which I find a bit strange, to be honest. I'm a bit find it a bit strange that hasn't been enforced with a slowdown yet everywhere else has, because this is a prime. You could quite easily pick up 17x here from this last corner alone. It's so easy to do. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And we head down to the main straight again, start finish line, and there we go. That is the last track guide of the season at the Hungaroring. I think it's gonna make I think it's gonna be a real good track this week. Hope you guys enjoyed that. As always, hope it makes you more consistent, faster, and you have a good last week to your season. But yeah, lo and behold, guys, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button, turn those notifications on, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye.